This is the inspiring story of a person's journey to mastering the English language, filled with determination, setbacks, and ultimate success. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The beginning of a new journey. The day I decided to learn English was a turning point in my life. I remember sitting in my small room, looking at a brochure for language classes. I had been considering this decision for a long time, but something always held me back. Maybe it was fear. Fear of making mistakes, of not being understood, or of being judged. But deep down, I knew that learning English would open up new opportunities and help me connect with people beyond my small circle. I took a deep breath and dialed the number on the brochure. "Hello, I'd like to enroll in your English classes," I said, my voice trembling slightly. The person on the other end was kind and patient, guiding me through the enrollment process. Before I knew it, I had signed up for my first class. I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was the beginning of a new journey, and I was determined to give it my best. The first day of class. The first day of class was daunting. I arrived early, clutching my notebook and pen, and found a seat at the back of the room. The classroom was filled with people from different backgrounds, all of whom seemed to be more confident than I felt. Our teacher, Mr. Wang, greeted us with a warm smile and introduced himself in clear, simple English. "We're here to learn and grow together," he said, and his words eased some of my anxiety. As we went around the room introducing ourselves, my heart pounded in my chest. When it was my turn, I managed to say, "My name is your name, and I want to learn English to improve my job prospects." It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Throughout the class, Mr. Wang encouraged us to speak, even if we made mistakes. "It's okay to make mistakes," he reassured us. "That's how we learn." His positive attitude made me feel less self-conscious, and I started to participate more, even if it was just a few words at a time. A supportive environment. As the weeks passed, I began to look forward to my classes. The environment was supportive, and I felt safe to express myself. I made friends with a few classmates, like Maria from Brazil and Ahmed from Egypt. We would often stay after class to chat in English, sharing our experiences and struggles. One day, during a break, Maria turned to me and said, "You're doing really well, you know. I've noticed how much more confident you've become." Her words surprised me. I hadn't realized how much I had grown in such a short time. Her encouragement motivated me to keep pushing myself. Embracing challenges. One of the biggest challenges I faced was speaking. I was comfortable reading and writing, but when it came to speaking, I often froze. I worried about my accent and pronunciation, and this fear held me back. Mr. Wang noticed this and offered extra help. "Let's try practicing outside of class," he suggested one day after class. I agreed, and we started meeting once a week to have informal conversations. He would ask me about my day, my interests, and my goals, gently correcting my mistakes and teaching me new phrases. These sessions were incredibly helpful, and slowly I began to feel more at ease. I also started to practice speaking on my own. I would choose a topic, like describing my day or talking about my favorite book, and record myself speaking. Listening to the recordings was uncomfortable at first. I cringed at every mistake, but it helped me identify areas where I needed to improve. With time, I began to notice progress. My sentences flowed more naturally, and I was able to express myself more clearly. Finding my voice. One evening, as I practiced in front of the mirror, I felt a sense of accomplishment. I was no longer afraid to hear my own voice speaking English. I realized that I had something to say, and it was worth sharing, even if it wasn't perfect. This realization gave me the courage to speak more in class and to participate in discussions. I also started to explore English media. I watched movies with subtitles and listened to English songs, trying to catch as many words as I could. It was challenging, but I enjoyed it. I found myself humming along to songs and even singing out loud when I was alone. English was becoming a part of my daily life, and I loved it. Setting a goal. As my confidence grew, I set a new goal for myself. I wanted to give a speech in English. It was an ambitious goal, and the thought of speaking in front of an audience terrified me, but I was determined. I shared my goal with Mr. Wang, and he was supportive. "That's a fantastic goal," he said, his eyes shining with encouragement. "Let's work on it together." We started by writing a short speech about my journey of learning English. It was a deeply personal piece, and as I wrote, I felt a surge of emotion. This language, which had once seemed so foreign and daunting, was now a bridge to new opportunities and connections. Practicing the speech. I practiced my speech every day. I stood in front of the mirror, delivering it with as much confidence as I could muster. I recorded myself and listened to the playback, adjusting my pronunciation and intonation. I even practiced in front of Maria and Ahmed, who cheered me on and offered helpful feedback. "You're going to be amazing," Ahmed said after one practice session. His words filled me with a sense of determination. I was nervous, but I was also excited to share my story. The speech day. The day of the speech arrived, and my stomach was in knots. I had been invited to speak at a small event organized by the language school. It was a gathering of students and teachers, and I was one of the speakers. As I stood backstage, I felt a wave of doubt wash over me. What if I forgot my words? What if I stumbled? I took a deep breath and reminded myself why I was doing this. I was here to share my story, to show others that it was possible to overcome fear and doubt. With that thought in mind, I walked onto the stage. The room was quiet as I began to speak. "Hello, my name is your name, and I would like to share my journey of learning English with you." My voice trembled at first, but as I continued, I felt my confidence growing. I spoke about my struggles and my small victories, about the friends I had made and the joy of discovering a new language. As I reached the end of my speech, I looked out at the audience. They were smiling, and some were even nodding in encouragement. Learning English has been a challenging but rewarding journey, I concluded. It has given me the confidence to dream bigger and to believe in myself. I hope my story inspires you to keep learning and growing. The room erupted in applause, and I felt a surge of pride and relief. I had done it. I had faced my fear and shared my story in English. Conclusion of Chapter 1. As I stepped off the stage, I felt a sense of accomplishment that I had never experienced before. This was just the beginning, but it was a powerful start. I realized that learning English was more than just mastering a language. It was about finding my voice and using it to connect with others. With each step I took, I was building a new version of myself, one that was confident, determined, and unafraid to take on new challenges. I was excited for what lay ahead, and I knew that I was ready to continue this journey, one word at a time. Chapter 2: Breaking Barriers. After the excitement of delivering my first speech, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I had proven to myself that I could face my fears, and now I wanted to see how far I could go. But I knew that this was just the beginning. There were still many barriers to overcome in my journey to becoming fluent in English. A new challenge. One of the biggest challenges I faced was speaking spontaneously. While I had practiced my speech for weeks, real-life conversations were much more unpredictable. In class, I often hesitated when called upon to answer a question or join a discussion. My mind would race, trying to translate my thoughts from my native language to English, and by the time I was ready to speak, the moment had often passed. One day, Mr. Wang announced that we would be having a debate in class. Each student would be given a topic, and we would have to argue for or against it in front of our classmates. The idea of speaking without preparation made my stomach churn with anxiety. "I know this might be challenging for some of you," Mr. Wang said, his gaze sweeping across the room. "But it's a great way to practice thinking and speaking in English on the spot. Just do your best, and remember, it's okay to make mistakes." I drew a deep breath as he handed out the topics. When it was my turn, I received a slip of paper with the words, "Is technology a help or a hindrance in our daily lives?" I was assigned to argue that technology was a hindrance. I spent the next few days researching and preparing notes, but no amount of preparation could shake my nervousness. The day of the debate arrived, and my hands were clammy as I waited for my turn. I listened to my classmates present their arguments, and as my turn approached, I felt my heart pounding. The debate. When Mr. Wang called my name, I stood up, feeling like my legs were made of jelly. I walked to the front of the class and faced my classmates. "Good afternoon," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "Today, I will argue that technology is a hindrance in our daily lives." I glanced at my notes, but my mind felt blank. I forced myself to continue. While technology has brought many benefits, it also has negative impacts. For example, it can be distracting and make us less productive. We spend too much time on social media, and this can affect our mental health. As I spoke, I could see some of my classmates nodding in agreement. I felt a small boost of confidence and continued, trying to make eye contact and use gestures to emphasize my points. Another example is how technology affects our communication skills. We often rely on texting and social media instead of having face-to-face conversations, which can lead to misunderstandings and a lack of personal connection. When I finished, I took a deep breath and looked at Mr. Wang. He smiled and nodded. "Thank you for sharing your perspective. You made some good points," he said. Relief washed over me as I returned to my seat. It wasn't perfect, but I had done it. I had spoken in front of the class without a script, and that was a big step forward. Gaining confidence. After the debate, I noticed a change in myself. I felt more comfortable speaking up in class and participating in discussions. I realized that the fear of making mistakes was holding me back, and that the only way to overcome it was to keep pushing myself out of my comfort zone. I started volunteering to answer questions and share my opinions more often. There were still times when I stumbled over words or struggled to express my thoughts clearly, but I was learning to accept these moments as part of the process. Each time I spoke, I felt a little more confident. Outside of class, I continued to practice speaking as much as possible. I talked to myself while doing chores, describing what I was doing in English. I practiced ordering food at restaurants in English, even if the staff spoke my native language. These small steps helped me build my confidence and improve my fluency. Making new friends. As I grew more confident, I also started making more friends in class. One afternoon, after a particularly lively discussion about travel, a group of us decided to go out for coffee together. We were an eclectic mix of people from different countries and backgrounds, all united by our desire to learn English. As we sat around a table at a cozy cafe, the conversation flowed easily. We shared stories about our hometowns, our favorite foods, and our dreams for the future. "I want to travel the world," said Maria, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "And I want to be able to communicate with people everywhere I go." Ahmed nodded in agreement. "For me, learning English is about improving my career opportunities. I want to work in an international company and be able to communicate with people from all over the world." I shared my own goals, feeling a sense of camaraderie with these new friends. "I want to improve my English so I can apply for better jobs and feel more confident in myself," I said. As we talked, I realized that we were all on the same journey, facing similar challenges and supporting each other along the way. Joining a conversation club. One of my classmates, Chen, mentioned a local English conversation club that met every week. "It's a great way to practice speaking with native speakers and meet new people," he said. I was intrigued, but also a little intimidated by the idea of speaking with native English speakers. What if I couldn't keep up? Despite my fears, I decided to give it a try. The club met at a community center, and when I walked in, I was greeted by a friendly group of people chatting in English. Chen introduced me to the club leader, a cheerful woman named Linda, who welcomed me warmly. "Just relax and have fun," she said with a smile. "We're all here to learn and support each other." We started with some icebreaker activities, and I felt my nerves easing as we played a word association game. Then we split into small groups to discuss a topic. My group's topic was favorite hobbies, and I found myself talking about my love for cooking. The conversation was relaxed and informal, and I realized that the native speakers weren't judging me for my mistakes. They were just happy to have a conversation and help us practice. Overcoming the fear of speaking. Attending the conversation club became a regular part of my routine. Each week, I challenged myself to speak more and to engage with new people. It wasn't always easy, and there were still moments when I felt self-conscious, but I was slowly breaking down the barriers that had once held me back. One evening, after a particularly lively discussion about movies, Linda pulled me aside. "You've really improved since you first joined the club," she said. "You're much more confident now." Her words meant a lot to me. I had been working so hard to improve, and it was encouraging to hear that others could see my progress. I thanked her and felt a renewed determination to keep pushing myself, taking on new roles. As I gained more confidence, I started taking on new roles in the conversation club. Linda asked me to help organize some of the activities, and I even led a discussion one evening. The topic was cultural traditions, and I talked about some of the festivals and customs from my home country. It was nerve-wracking to speak in front of the group, but I was proud of myself for stepping up to the challenge. I also started volunteering as a conversation partner for new members of the club. It felt good to be able to help others who were just starting their journey of learning English. I remembered how nervous I had been when I first joined, and I wanted to make them feel welcome and supported. Expanding my vocabulary. While my speaking skills were improving, I knew I still had a long way to go with my vocabulary. There were many times when I wanted to express myself more clearly, but couldn't find the right words. Mr. Wang suggested that I start keeping a vocabulary journal. Write down any new words you come across, along with their meanings and example sentences, he advised. Review them regularly and try to use them in your conversations. I took his advice and began carrying a small notebook with me everywhere I went. Whenever I encountered a new word, in a book, on a sign, or during a conversation, I would jot it down and look it up later. I also started using a language learning app to expand my vocabulary. Each day, I set a goal to learn at least 5 new words. Celebrating small victories. As I continued to learn, I realized the importance of celebrating small victories. One evening, while watching a movie in English, I suddenly understood an entire scene without needing subtitles. It was a small moment, but it felt like a huge accomplishment. I cheered out loud, feeling a surge of pride. Another time, I had a conversation with a stranger in English at a bookstore. We talked about our favorite authors, and I was able to express my opinions without hesitation. As I left the store, I felt like I was walking on air. These moments reminded me of how far I had come since I first started learning English. Chapter 3. Immersing in English. As I progressed in my English learning journey, I realized that simply attending classes and practicing in a controlled environment wasn't enough. To truly master the language, I needed to immerse myself in it. I needed to bring English into every aspect of my life. A language-only environment. One of the first steps I took was to create a language-only environment at home. I made a rule for myself. Whenever I was alone, I would only use English. This meant that I would think in English, talk to myself in English, and even dream in English. It was difficult at first, and I often found myself slipping back into my native language without realizing it. But I was determined to stick to this new habit. I also changed the settings on my phone, computer, and all my apps to English. This forced me to interact with the language daily, even in small ways like checking the weather or setting reminders. I started watching English TV shows and movies, first with subtitles and then without. I listened to English music and tried to understand the lyrics, singing along whenever I could. Finding joy in learning. To make the process enjoyable, I chose content that I was genuinely interested in. I watched documentaries about topics I was passionate about, read books that fascinated me, and listened to podcasts on subjects that I wanted to learn more about. This made learning English feel less like a chore and more like a fun and enriching experience. One day, I stumbled upon a YouTube channel where a British traveler shared his experiences exploring different cultures around the world. His videos were engaging and filled with beautiful visuals, but what caught my attention was his way of speaking. He had a clear and expressive voice, and he used a lot of interesting vocabulary. I decided to use his videos as a learning tool. I would watch each video with a notebook by my side, pausing to write down new words and phrases. I would then try to use these new words in my daily conversations or writing. It was challenging, but it was also exciting to learn about different cultures while improving my English. Joining an online community. In addition to my local conversation club, I joined an online community for English learners. It was a forum where people from all over the world shared their experiences, asked questions, and practiced writing in English. I introduced myself and started participating in discussions. At first, I was nervous about making mistakes and worried about how others might judge my writing, but I quickly realized that everyone in the community was supportive and encouraging. We were all there to learn and grow together. I made friends from different countries, and we would chat regularly, helping each other with our language skills. We would discuss our cultures, share our favorite books and movies, and even correct each other's grammar and vocabulary. It was like having a global network of study partners, creating a language diary. One of the most helpful practices I adopted was keeping a language diary. Every night, before going to bed, I would write a few paragraphs about my day in English. I would describe what I did, how I felt, and any new words or phrases I had learned. Writing in English helped me organize my thoughts and express myself more clearly. It also gave me a chance to reflect on my progress. Some nights, I would feel frustrated because I struggled to find the right words to describe my feelings. But I learned to embrace these challenges. Whenever I came across a word I didn't know, I would look it up and add it to my vocabulary journal. Over time, I noticed that my writing was becoming more fluid and natural. Speaking with native speakers. While I was making progress with my writing and listening skills, I knew that speaking with native speakers was crucial for improving my fluency. I had been attending the conversation club regularly, but I wanted more opportunities to speak in a natural and spontaneous way. I decided to find a language exchange partner. I joined a language exchange website and created a profile, explaining that I was looking for someone to practice English with. In exchange, I offered to help others with my native language. I received several messages from people who were also eager to learn, and I arranged to have weekly video calls with a few of them. One of my language partners was a university student named Sarah from Canada. We hit it off right away and decided to meet online twice a week. Our conversations were casual and varied, ranging from our favorite books to cultural differences and even our dreams for the future. Sarah was patient and encouraging, and she would gently correct me whenever I made a mistake. I appreciated her feedback and made a conscious effort to improve with each conversation. Overcoming the fear of making mistakes. Talking with native speakers was both exciting and intimidating. There were times when I felt self-conscious about my accent or worried that I wasn't expressing myself clearly. But I reminded myself that making mistakes was a natural part of the learning process. Every time I stumbled over a word or used the wrong tense, I was learning something new. One day, during a call with Sarah, I was trying to explain a funny incident that had happened to me at work. I got so caught up in the story that I mixed up some words and used incorrect grammar. I paused, feeling embarrassed, but Sarah just laughed and said, "Don't worry about it. I understood exactly what you meant. You're doing great." Her words reassured me, and I realized that communication was more about conveying ideas and connecting with others than about being perfect. From that moment on, I stopped worrying so much about making mistakes and focused more on enjoying the conversation.